Afternoon, ladies and gentlemen of the media. We thank you very much for being here this evening. We really appreciate it. At the head table, we have the chairman of CROSQ, that's the CARICOM Regional Organization for Standards and Quality, Mr. Jose Trejo, at my far right. Next to him is your Minister of Agriculture, Trade, Housing, Lands and Environment. I had to write it down so I remembered it. The Honorable Mr. Claude Hogan. And at my immediate right is Mr. Derek Omar, our CEO of the CARICOM Regional Organization for Standards and Quality, CROSQ. I am Latoya Burnham, Technical Officer, Communication and Information. Now, the reason that we're here today is to just give you an update of what has been happening with the 28th meeting of the CROSQ Council here in Montserrat. It's the first council meeting we've had here in Montserrat, and it's been a packed schedule so far. We would have started with the opening yesterday, along with some meetings and workshops surrounding some new initiatives for the CROSQ network. And today would have been the presentations by ACP as well as the technical officers for the CARICOM Regional Organization for Standards and Quality about the new initiatives as well as their plans for the year. We're still continuing that process, but we wanted to bring you here to talk a little bit about what this initiatives, what this entire meeting here in Montserrat means, and to give you a little bit of update in terms of how CROSQ is hoping to help the people of Montserrat. So I will begin with our chairman, and he will give you a few remarks. Mr. Trejo.
Okay, good afternoon, and thank you for this opportunity to sit with you and to talk to you a little bit about the work of CROSQ and what we do. As Ms. Burnham said, the council is comprised of the 15 member states, and on this occasion, and as we have had over the last couple of years, the Dominican Republic as part of the CARIFORUM group of countries. So we do have the Dominican Republic present here in our at this particular meeting. The council, like CROSQ, has the mandate and the responsibility to develop quality infrastructure, and with the grouping 15 plus the DR is specifically trying to develop a regional quality infrastructure. So it comprises all the national standards bodies across the region. Every member state is a paid member, so we contribute to the operational budget of the organization. So CROSQ works based on those contributions from each respective member state, as well as it looks to project funding, project donors, partnerships in order to carry forward with its agenda in developing regional quality infrastructure. It is our attempt to try and have at least we have 2 meetings per annum, and so at least 1 meeting we try to have in a member state to promote the organization, as well as to try and build and create awareness and sensitization about the work we do in the respective member state where we do have a meeting. So our purpose here in Montserrat, this being the first meeting here, is to do just that, to try and build awareness, sensitize public, private sector entities, government importantly, to support the work of the country, to understand what the country is trying to do in terms of building its quality infrastructure. I believe Montserrat is in its nascent stages of putting in place its quality infrastructure, and is looking to this organization to help put it on that platform to help develop that infrastructure for the betterment of production of goods and services of the highest quality, of the highest caliber, that can not only compete at home but can compete abroad. So in the whole scope of trying to develop national quality infrastructure is to ensure that there is an opportunity for the country to elevate the level of and the quality of goods and services that it offers intra-regionally as well as extra-regionally, and to be able to participate at the participate in terms of international trade. So part of our purpose is to ensure that there's cohesiveness and that there's integration among the member states in terms of carrying forward with this agenda. So this is in a short synopsis of our purpose and why we are here today. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Trejo. Just to give a little context, when we talk about quality infrastructure, we're talking about standards. We're talking about metrology, which really is the science of weights and measurements. We're talking about accreditation services, and we're talking about conformity assessment, and that's testing, inspection, as well as certification. So those are the kind of services. When we say quality infrastructure, that word means a lot. I will now turn over to Mr. Omar, and he will give you a breakdown of what has been happening so far with the last 2 days of meetings.
Thanks very much. Like my colleague said, quality infrastructure, as mentioned by our chairman, speaks to the development of standards, measurement infrastructure, weights, temperature, volume, those kinds of things. It speaks to development of testing facilities like laboratories, inspections of goods coming into or out of your country, certification of those goods to quality standards, and also helping the whole system to be recognized through a methodology called accreditation, and that's quality infrastructure. But there's a more important part than that, or an equal important part, which is to deal with awareness building, helping consumers understand their quality rights when they buy. There is another dimension to that, helping businesses and industry to use standards, measurement infrastructure, testing facilities to be able to conform to international requirements for exportation against standards and those things. Those are the things we discuss, and by bringing all our technical officers to Montserrat, by bringing the CEOs of the various bureaus to Montserrat, we are helping to increase the knowledge base of the community of people here in that regard. We're helping to market the whole Bureau of Standards, the whole trade mystique that the minister gets involved in, and we also bring the CEOs of the 15 other bureaus of standards so that when they go back home, they can talk to the great brand that is being built here at a national level and that will associate itself with the products that coming out from your country. So if you have a quality brand for your country, it's much more easier to get your products sold on the international markets, because the quality reflects from the brand to the product, from the product to the brand. And I wouldn't speak for the minister, but I think he did what he had to do to bring all these 15 bureaus of standards CEOs here so they can go back as brand ambassadors, not only for their country, but yours too. And with that, I'll probably pass it to the minister.
Thank you, CEO, and thank you, Chair, for the kind words. And of course, as you know, I've been in trade for all my life, and I am pretty much aware and said in my opening sentences to this ceremony that opened here yesterday that it's one thing for us to tell our folks here about small business initiatives and exporting and getting markets and earning foreign exchange, but it's a complete different world to have an architecture that supports that. And this is why I'm very happy that that is on exhibition here in Montserrat. I'm glad the media has come so that you can take the message beyond these walls, because most of this morning was private meetings. And we're likely to have more private meetings over the next couple of days. But I want the folks to continue to hear what policies are being driven here and where Montserrat could benefit. I certainly know that you are aware, as I'm aware, that we have come a long way. We do have a semblance of some of these infrastructure in place in a decentralized form in Montserrat in terms of the hospital. There are diagnostic labs which we have to regulate to secure and ensure public safety and health. We have our mining industry which is emerging. We have, as you know, the geothermal, and we have even the airplanes that fly into Montserrat where they need to have weights and measures properly checked for safe landing and takeoff. So some of these things we take for granted. Obviously, we are looking at the optimum level of trying to enhance our products for local consumption, that this would be consumed at home by our tourists who visit. But as the chairman said, we also want to optimize that to include being able to export to our other CARICOM markets and eventually to reach international markets, if only through accumulation, if we can't do it ourselves because we are small. But we have, as you know, niche agro products that we can reach beyond Montserrat. And so I'm happy that you're here, and I thank the CROSQ technical team for supporting and sharing. They have also brought a team that is doing a video production of our quality infrastructure. I've had my staff tour them into Plymouth to see the operations of our mining, the sifting, the sorting, the trucking, to see what I'm talking about when I'm talking about capital formation, and that what we need to make our products competitive. They're right here in Montserrat. We just need to organize them, utilizing lessons learned by all of these 15 other CARICOM member states, and institutionalize our bureau, which we shall pursue in this year, to ensure that we are on top of our business as a country. I want to thank the CEO and the chair, of course, for bringing this more vividly to the attention of the people of Montserrat more than I could, about the fact that now we have had a chance, unfortunately, due to act of God, to be restarting our redevelopment from scratch. We have to do it. We have the pleasure, actually, of doing it hand in hand with quality infrastructure, which most of the other CARICOM countries had to adjust their way of thinking and operating to deal with this quality infrastructure, which started as an EDF project, and now is being mainstreamed, and we are catching up. So it's really going to be a powerful way forward for Montserrat to stay in this CROSQ organization. We are also going to take on some representation and lead from the council issues in technical barriers to trade, and we'll talk about that at another time and date once the council has completely elaborated how we're going forward with that. But Montserrat will be fully 100% included, and to try to enhance the benefits that we can get for our people and our export potential. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Minister. I think one of the things that CROSQ as a network has going for it is that it's a collaboration. So where there are strengths in other countries, we utilize those to help those who are now starting and coming along. I thank the Minister for his comments, and we will open the floor for a few questions from members of the media. We don't have a lot of time, but we will take at least 2 questions.
Thank you all very much for your opening presentations. I'm James White from the local broadcaster, ZJB Radio Montserrat. And I want to start with the Honorable Minister. And he touched on the whole issue of trade barriers and the possibility that you might not have explored it sufficiently, maybe by Thursday. And one of the things I'm curious about is the fact that we suppose a lot of things. There are a lot of suppositions as to what might be if certain things are in place to ensure that we have smooth trade in goods and services throughout the region. And my question to the Honorable Minister is, how do we move away from such suppositions and to have concrete policies, if you like, with the supporting legislation to make something happen on the ground?
Well, we have moved away from supposition a long time now. We have actually draft legislation for quality infrastructure in Montserrat. As you know, that the draft legislation was provided as a model from CROSQ. We are actually using the Bahamas draft to deal with enacting our bit of legislation, because Bahamas also just started their own QI infrastructure, and they have come as far as to have a bureau with a headquarters, which is going to be opened in 27th of May, and they've invited us to have a look at it as well. So we have been working. In fact, CROSQ has actually always kind of pulled us with Bahamas. We have had the professional study of David and others from CROSQ to help guide us as to how do we institutionalize, because there is quality infrastructure work going on in Montserrat, but how do we institutionalize it and make it work more effectively and efficiently, so that there is the confidence. That's what he's talking about when he said brand Montserrat, that people must know that in brand Montserrat, we recognize quality mark, quality standard, we test our goods, we publish our findings, and there is this sense of that we are responsible for what we are producing and selling to the market. And I think just from our lunch they have here, they could see that brand Montserrat is wonderful. We just need to have it accredited. Thank you very much.
Okay, Mr. Minister, again, we have a fledgling trade environment. And one of the things I'm looking at, and I know that you would have touched on it during your deliberations, the whole issue of access to other neighboring or regional territories. How is this going?
Well, I'm not sure which way you're coming from, but we have our own internal issues with access, which of course we don't have a port. And from Montserrat's point of view, yes, quality issues arise in that, and we have the paperwork to support both a port at Little Bay and Cars Bay, because part of our access problem is exacerbated by the fact we don't have a safe harbor with a breakwater. So even if you have the best ship, you still sometimes cannot land at Montserrat. But they have problems in CARICOM. They have some of the best ships and the best planes, the ATR 70 and all kind of thing, and they still can't get to Antigua on time, and we had those challenges. But Leyte is a private sector. They're guided by the best advice in terms of on time. These are now standards practiced by Virgin, BA. Everybody's doing it. I'm not sure what we can do with Leyte to make them come up to standard, but it certainly is a regional problem, but Montserrat is peculiar.
I know Montserrat's situation is unique, and you touched on it briefly, and I know that it would take some time to get that sorted out. But let's look from a regional perspective in terms of harmonization of legislation or policies, if we can look at it that way, and to ensure that we have this harmonization going forward. The minister would have mentioned the issues or the barriers, if you like, to the free movement
Of goods
throughout the region. So could you touch on that, please?
The whole quality infrastructure chain starts from the development of national standards that specifies what quality is for any particular good or item. For any particular good or service, different member states define quality in different ways, and then they codify it. What we do at CROSQ is we gather those member state technical officers together, and then we look at these standards and we try to come up with one standard. So once you have one definition of quality, theoretically speaking, your goods should move a lot more freer through the Caribbean, because then you cannot use a standard to say, knock out a product or don't let it in. So funny enough, last year, August, we brought all those regional standard developers to Montserrat to look at this whole regional standards development and harmonization process. And coming out of that experience, we developed and we finalized a new way of harmonizing regional standards. And we came back to Montserrat to complete the cycle at this CROSQ Council meeting to have the CEOs of the 15 bureaus approve the new changes in the methodology to help us harmonize these standards more and faster. So we might even call this the Montserrat Declaration. You never know. You know? But that is really good, and that's half of the story. So once we get this process of regional standards harmonization done in a more contemporary fashion, and we start producing more regional standards, then Montserrat, rather than having to invent their own standards, what they start doing is adopting these regional standards as national standards. So some member states offer up national standards to be regionalized. Montserrat could save a lot of money by just taking these regional standards now and nationalizing it through the new legislation. And that would help trade in a very material way.
Honorable Minister, the whole issue of the regional quality policy and infrastructure, and I know that this would have come up in your discussions, and how will Montserrat benefit from this, and possibly by extension, how is the region pulled into it?
Well, there are two, you mentioned one of the benefits. There are two things that people think about when they hear about benefits: money or intellectual property. And it's a part of all the infrastructure, just like how your homeowners and your citizens cannot run without information, and society cannot run without the courts of law, because the law underpins everything. So business, commerce, quality, industry and trade cannot run without quality infrastructure. But to put that infrastructure in place, you have to have the legislation. And so what we are getting from CROSQ and being involved by paying a small annual subscription is all of that intellectual property of the legislation, the policy, and Montserrat pays about $500 US a year, believe it or not. But fortunately for us, that is by a formula, but we get back an equitable share comparable to the other member states. So right now I can tell you on the intellectual property side, we have gotten all of the model legislation, we have all of the standards. We are getting one of the model websites that will publish all of these standards for Montserrat, which we can also have a trade element on that website created by CROSQ. We have gotten already all of this kit you see used in this room. They didn't bring it for themselves. They sent some ahead. This belongs to Montserrat now. The projectors, the printers, the screens, everything you see here is part also of an information system. We are getting a new VC suite for our conference room so that we can have more real-time meetings other than trying to travel all the while. And that's going to go in the new headquarters building. The new metrology kit, of course, we are homing it either in the new headquarters building or with CWL. So the returns are much greater than $500 US a year so far. And I hope it continues like that. I don't want to tell them everything else I'm getting, because I mean, I use the CROSQ membership to leverage whatever we can for Montserrat. And even this conference is part sponsored in US dollar terms by CROSQ in terms of hosting it. So we are very thankful for that, and we want to continue engagement and involvement in this relationship. Because you see, it's all love up here. But even Montserrat's small, but they say we are. Talawa. Good, thank you.
I just wanted to add that the quality infrastructure that we're talking about and we're speaking about here today is for national development. It is for the private sector, it's for the end user. So all this institutional preparation, it is not for us, the practitioners. It is for the private sector. It is to enhance competitiveness. It is for the protection of health and safety of consumers, with goods coming into the country, goods going out of the country, because we have a responsibility to, as a region, as a country, to export goods that are safe. So all of this in that context is really important, that all the investment that is being made is specifically for that purpose. And that's why it's very important to get that support, because it's a two-way street, and I think that the private sector needs to understand what this investment means for them in terms of improving their bottom lines, as the minister spoke to. So I think that is an important thing that we want to bring about. So minister is not losing sleep every day to that he knows that whatever he's doing is specifically for that purpose, and there has to be some partnership and networking across institutions.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Trejo. I know you may have additional questions, but unfortunately we have to wrap up. I would like to say thank you very much, Mr. White, for the insightful questions. Ms. Ryan, thank you for being here. Mr. Braid, Ms. McDonald, thank you both as well. And Mr. Pollard in the back, thank you for being here. I just want to say thank you to our panel here as well. Mr. Jose Trejo, our chairman, our Minister of Trade, as well as the head of the bureau here in Montserrat, and Mr. Derek Omar, our CEO at CROSQ. And again, thank you very much. You have my contact information. If you have any additional questions, feel free to shoot them through me. So thank you again, and have a good evening.